It's me, the guy you let down.
Rejection hurts. No one likes hearing that they aren't good enough. But at Disney, rejection is just a fact of life. Did you know Toy Story 2 was almost sent straight to DVD? The plot was the only reason it got a theatrical release. This video isn't for the Toy Stories of the world. It's for Bambi 2 and Atlantis: Milo's Return. Those films that sat on a dusty Blockbuster shelf or Best Buy bargain pile waiting for a kid to take them home. It's time to remember those forgotten sequels to some of our beloved classics here on The Binger. Beauty and the Beast: Enchanted Christmas. It looks like the tale as old as time got itself a second life. So does that make this sequel the second oldest tale? Or are they just the same age? Whatever, it's better if we just leave that train of thought alone. There are better things to talk about here. For instance, there's a wonderful piece of trivia that goes along with this forgotten film. Forte, the plot's antagonist, is one of the first complete CGI characters used in a 2D movie. It was a monumental milestone for the Mickey Mouse animation team, but sadly not a big enough deal to send this one to theaters. Instead, audiences were gifted an odd rewrite to the classic story that happens during Christmas. The film doesn't compare to the original. Keep it next to all those other Disney films that a child will love but adults loathe. The villain's goal is just too weak. A human turned into an organ wants to stay an organ. It makes us wonder if the film would have fared better if it used the first villain they tried: Avenant, Gaston's little brother. The Little Mermaid: Ariel's Beginning. One review for this home video release remarked, "To label this a musical would be false advertising." Ouch, that's a real gut punch considering how popular the first film's music was. To be fair though, the critic is totally right. The songs in this film are by far the weakest point. Now some of you may be getting confused. You hear the Little Mermaid sequel and you instantly think of Return to the Sea. We don't blame you. That's the first one we think of too. Turns out they tried for a prequel back in 2008. If that sounds bizarre, that's because it is. Here's the real kicker. The movie's basically Footloose underwater. Just picture Kevin Bacon jamming out in a warehouse, only it's covered in barnacles, and he has mermaid fins. On second thought, that's not going to sell you on this movie. The point is that the story isn't all bad. The animation is quite good for a direct-to-DVD release, and it's still Ariel at the end of the day. You probably don't remember it because they released it 19 years after the first one. Lion King 1.5. Finally, a film that actually garnered praise from critics. See, not all these forgotten films are lumps of coal. Some of them are hidden gems. In fact, we argue that Lion King 1.5 brings new life to Lion King and elevates the story. Why did so many people forget about its existence? Well, it came out after Lion King 2, so a lot of people got confused by the naming. Just as Lion King is compared to Hamlet, this sequel is often compared to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. It's a morbid title, but a spot-on comparison. See, this film focuses on what Timon and Pumbaa are doing during their off-screen time. It highlights their origin stories with real sincerity and even includes commentary from them. Think of it as a Lion King version of Mystery Science Theater 3000. When it comes down to it, it's honestly a shame that the general public let this movie fall into obscurity. Perhaps Disney Plus will help jog people's memories for this sincere and funny follow-up to a modern classic. An extremely goofy movie. You know what's better than a goofy movie? An extremely goofy movie. No, really, it's one of the only home-release sequels to be rated higher by critics than the original, though not by much. We're not even surprised that many of you probably don't remember this one. After all, a lot of people tend to forget about a Goofy movie as well. Did you know the film was actually censored in later releases? A logo featured in the movie shows a skyscraper burning. The video was released in 2000, so we're confident you can put the pieces together from here. However, even with that notable change, Goofy's return to the screen seems lost to the sands of time. It's a real bummer considering the general storyline. Here's the fundamental pitch. Max starts his freshman year of college, but his dad enrolls as well to finally get his degree. It's like a twisted version of Billy Madison. Well, that and a classic college movie like Animal House, only focused on skateboarding. The film has everything you could want. Cinderella 3: A Twist in Time. Wait, pause, we know what you're thinking. Yes, Disney made a third Cinderella film. Actually, no, you're probably trying to remember that they even made a second one. Well, they did. Here's the proof, because despite the Lion King's questionable release order, Disney usually doesn't just skip around to odd numbers. The plot plays out like a fairy tale version of Black Mirror. Poor Cinderella is tossed into an alternate reality when Lady Tremaine gets a hand on the fairy godmother's wand. The wicked villain uses the power to ensure that Anastasia's feet fit the slipper instead of the real suitor. Why the fairy godmother has that much power, we surely don't know. We'll give the movie this: it's actually not half bad. Seriously, as far as sequels go, this one is one of the more entertaining. The story, despite its tropes, feels fresh. The reason we all forget about it is because the story of Cinderella is so oversaturated. Think about how many alternate tellings there are out there. We can't blame anyone for ignoring this one when a new one comes out so often. Atlantis: Milo's Return. In some alternate reality, Atlantis was a huge hit at the box office. And the television show Team Atlantis was released as planned. That, dear viewer, isn't the reality we currently find ourselves in today. Instead, Atlantis struggled to surge financially, and the execs at Mouse Corp just couldn't justify the television show. There was only one problem: they already animated the first couple of episodes. Trying to avoid the waste of time, the studio instead cobbled together the episodes into a full-length movie. Then, silently under cover of night, they dispensed the DVDs into bargain bins all over the world. It was the perfect plan. Okay, so a little bit of that last part is made up, but most of that is the real story. When you watch Milo's Return, you can quickly see that the animation style is fit for TV. It's a little clunky and rushed. The story itself is fine, but nothing incredible. We all simply forgot about it because the whole thing was rushed to release. They only animated a few more scenes to connect it all. Face it, they just wanted a quick buck. Leroy and Stitch.
It's Leroy Jenkins!
No, editor, not that Leroy. We're talking about Leroy, Stitch's clone with a desire for chaos. This film actually premiered on the Disney Channel. It was never going to get a theatrical release, but was popular enough to get a DVD release too. Most people who paid attention to the franchise watched it live and then proceeded to forget about it totally. This is fair. The film's alright, but it's not spectacular compared to the television series or first movie. Leroy is an interesting villain that does manage to capture all the 624 experiments that the show focused on. However, the character arcs and emotional points lack a real oomph. Part of what we all loved about Lilo and Stitch is the emotional high points. Those are just missing here. Don't get us wrong, even now parts of this sequel are super enjoyable. Heck, we would even watch it again just to see Stitch dressed up as Elvis Presley. It's just too cute. In fact, the moral of this story is to never underestimate Stitch's cuteness. It's a really effective way to sell home release sequels. Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. Time to get real. Some of you guys hate on The Hunchback of Notre Dame way too much. It's not the happiest Disney film of all time, but that's what makes it stand out. For the first time we can remember, it showed the main character not get the perfect ending. Then all that went away with the sequel. And we're not kidding here. The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2 is a lot like Rise of Skywalker. Actually, there's one huge difference. This film is incredibly short, like barely an hour when push comes to shove. It's almost as if they just got this story out there to profit off the first one. Of all the entries on this list, this heartless sequel is probably the most corporate. The story is okay. Quasimodo finds his love interest and gets a happier ending this time. However, the animation is just awful. You can tell they barely put any time into this one. Everything feels 50 years older than it actually is. The color palette is less vibrant and the characters don't move fluidly. It's merely a waste of space. Bambi 2. Quick quiz. What's Bambi's mother's name?
What's my mother's name?
Exactly. No one knows what her name is because Disney never named her. Her wiki page is literally titled Bambi's Mother. Look, Bambi's a great movie, a true classic. However, that fact alone is a huge oversight. Disney sought to fix a bit of this by building back up some of Bambi's adolescent years in this sequel. It's a real pleasure watching this movie. No, really, check it out. It's actually a sweet film with some excellent world building. The character growth is genuine and the audience does find out more about Bambi's father, the Great Prince. Yeah, even he gets a name. Overall, it's a pleasant venture into Bambi's formative years. The DVD sold over 2.6 million copies worldwide and even got a theatrical release in Europe. Clearly, the executive producers had a little more faith in this product. Some people certainly remember this sequel being made. But to be honest, by the time it came out, kids didn't connect to Bambi as much. There were newer, more exciting originals to be watched and enjoyed. Aladdin, King of Thieves. It might be hard to remember now, but Aladdin was a huge hit when it came out. The live-action remake soiled the legacy of this great Disney film, but it wasn't the first poor showing. Initially, fans remembered Return of Jafar as the straw that broke the camel's back. In fact, many people remember it to this day only because it was truly terrible. What many people didn't pay attention to was the third film in the franchise that tried to rectify that mistake. King of Thieves isn't the greatest of sequels Disney's ever put out, but it's way better than The Return of Jafar. For starters, the animation quality is higher, the story's more engaging and not just a reuse of characters. The writers even tried to stay as close as they could to the source material. The best part was Robin Williams returning to voice the genie for this sequel.
Oh, come on, enough of this dark past.
Many Disney fans are confident that his name on the box helped this sequel outsell the infamous predecessor. It's not that Dan Castellaneta was terrible as the genie, he's just no Robin Williams. It's incredible to look back and see all these forgotten stories people worked so hard to create. Did we forget an even more forgettable Disney sequel? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to support The Binger by liking this video and subscribing to keep up to date with everything The Binger.